Well, that's the thing. It doesn't really matter so much. It's really more of this kind of double change which has occurred as we go from the 20th into the 21st century. So this era of population growth to population stagnation and steady decline, and then also going from a younger population to an older population. And of course, China is not the first place in the world to go through these changes. And it certainly won't be the last. And so the question is how it responds to these changes. You're absolutely right. It doesn't make any difference if there's 1.41 billion or 1.42 billion in China. That's not really important. But it's about how China can respond to this new economic and social system which it now finds itself in.
So let's talk about the ageing population. As you pointed out, it's not the first country to face this issue. Many countries are. Does it, though, present different challenges for China?
Well, it's often presented as this issue of a country that gets old before it gets rich. So can aging mean that a country gets stuck in this kind of middle income trap? But if you go beyond that, you've got to look at the broader picture for China and why things might not be quite as bad as they are often presented. That yes, the population has got older, but it's also got healthier and incomes have increased and education and human capital has increased. Just in the census, we see that as well. Not so much reported. Huge increase in the number of people with higher education, illiteracy rates down, poverty is, of course, going down as well. So China, in that sense, if it can translate those improvements in human capital, if you were to say, into improved productivity, to healthy aging, but then also fix some of the institutions which exist, such as the retirement age or the pension system. But then it can really then translate those changes into something which is not such a challenge. And then, of course, the advantage of aging later than Australia and Europe is that China can learn from the lessons there and develop and maintain and build more sustainable systems to cope with this inevitable future change.
And are you seeing that response happening? Are you seeing that adjustment taking place?
Yeah, definitely. So there's now, I think, a real movement behind the need to increase the retirement age in China, which, you know, is exactly the same as it was in 1949. And of course, if you think that life expectancy and the nature of work has really changed a lot since 1949, and yet we're stuck with something of a slightly inconsistent or incoherent model there. So if you're a female in the public sector or in a state-owned enterprise, you know, you may well have in an administrative job. You may have started work age 25, right? So let's say you've got a master's degree, you start work at 25. You've then got to retire. You'll then retire at 55. But then you may well now live until 85, so, you know, in the near future. So imagine that your working life and your retired life is equally the same. Well, that's so far away from 1949, and it's also so far away from what is a realistically sustainable system. You know, certainly a sustainable pension system.
And so to that point, of course, women can retire as young as 50, and the retirement age for men is 60. Now, that is really low, yet it's becoming quite a contentious issue for workers who still want to retire at that age.
That's right. So it's, without a doubt, you know, it will be a tricky subject because some people will want to continue to work, to go on beyond that mandatory age. Others, however, as you can imagine, they're quite happy to retire at 55. They're quite happy to retire at 60. So in that sense, it will be tricky. But then it's not only going to be people around or near retirement age who will want to have a say on this. Younger people as well may be concerned that, well, if we're looking to try and join the labour market, we're trying to get these jobs which are going to come about through retirement. If there's less retirement, then the argument will be there are fewer jobs for us to go into. Another factor related to that is about grandparental care. So, of course, in China, grandparents play a very significant role in caring for their grandchildren, whether or not it's in the same city or even in different cities. And so postponing retirement by 5 or 10 years could actually, in fact, it could ironically decrease the fertility rate and therefore increase the pace of aging, precisely because this resource of childcare then disappears. So that's what you've got to look at the whole thing together and realise that if you fix one problem, you may well, slightly exaggerate another challenge or issue.
Yeah, so it puts constant pressure on job availability, but it would be fairly critical too if the economy started losing workers.
Yeah, that's right. So I think that, as with everything, it's just one of the different levers to pull. So retirement age, for sure, is important. But even with changing the retirement age, the pension fund, particularly the urban pension fund, is not sustainable in the long term. So that will require some reform, both in terms of how it's funded, the levels of payment, but then even at the same time, the pension system is not necessarily adequate as a means of income protection for many older people anyway. So that needs to be changed. Similarly, if you're going that's from the demand side, from the supply side, of course, you've got to increase productivity. And I know we say this all the time, and it's very easy to say and very difficult to do. But then that goes back to this idea of how do you turn this new, healthier, wealthier, more skilled, more educated, younger, middle-aged population into these much more, to a productive and healthier population who will then age better, and then you bring in this virtuous cycle of change as the societies get older and older.
Yeah, and an adjustment. And it's interesting too because, of course, the one child policy was so entrenched, but now it's been relaxed. It looks like people don't necessarily want to jump on and have more kids. So how's that going to impact that whole equation down the track?
Yeah, so what seems to have happened is when the two-child policy came in, the number of second births increased somewhat, which is what we would expect. But actually, that slightly masks this underlying structural change whereby the number of first births are decreasing. And that's because the age of first birth, the age of marriage in China is increasing drastically. And essentially also China is going through the same process as elsewhere in East Asia of this kind of the cost of childbearing, the indirect costs of childbearing, like in Australia, are very high. But unfortunately, in our part of the world, the very unequal gender roles, particularly in terms of domestic care and childcare, and also caring for parents and parents-in-law, what happens at work, the impact on female career trajectory is so difficult and is such a major part of that's why the fertility rates here are so low. And so all of that then feeds into this issue of ageing and so on.
Yeah, quite a few societal adjustments, it looks like. Stuart, great to talk. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.